Yeah. Tim is I've been chair of one of our portfolio called K. I'm really well, and just spin out from K, Hawkhill, and just watch this company. I would say. I can't say too much about what's in the background, but it's a very hot area for investors, and leading the charge on that with Andrew.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the invitation to speak. Always great to be amongst some familiar faces and some new ones. As Sunil said, I'll tell you today about Hawkhill Therapeutics. Who knows Dundee? Who's been to Dundee? So you probably guess where the name has come from then, if you know Dundee well. Yeah, good. So it's a street in Dundee that goes up to the School of Life Sciences. It's actually still got cobbled stones, I think. But before we tell you about Hawkhill and our efforts in obesity, I need to tell you a little bit about the background, because there's always a story in the name. So, Sunil referenced ChaiTime Therapeutics. If you know Dundee, hopefully you know the River Tay exists. And naming the company was pretty easy when we were sat in the fourth story of one of the rooms at the University of Dundee when we looked across the Tay estuary. Hawkhill took a little bit more thinking. So there's a connection between the two, which I'll tell you about. But first of all, briefly, Tay, because I'll just fill in the story about Tay's efforts. So we founded in this is Tay, not Hawkhill, just to be clear. We founded in 2020, and we were a spin out from the university literally 2 weeks before COVID started or happened. We got one asset out of the university, and then the business model was, and I'm not rewriting history, was to minimize dilutive capital and to have a business model of taking to a candidate, partnering, using the proceeds to develop second asset, third asset. So we ended up with a vehicle with partner projects and a revenue stream. That's exactly what we did. So the first one, we partnered a candidate, and our partner company have taken that into a phase 2B really quickly, really well. The readouts just come out, and that may not be exactly what they were looking for. They're working through what to do next with the asset. We took some money from that partnership and put that into the second project. This is all in the BET bromodomain space. This one is called Vine 202, which is the name of the company we partnered with. We again took that project from discovery to candidate in very short time with the support of O2H and some other helpers. Again, partnered, took the money and funded a third project. That project is in phase 1B for psoriasis, and there's been some very impressive efficacy in the early studies. It did suffer a clinical hold, and they're having to redo a dog study. If that reads out on the repeat clean, then they can start that project again, or we get it back. That's another story. The third project, that is a very ugly picture, but sadly that's what some kids suffer from. This is a small molecule genetic medicine. A small molecule genetic medicine. And it's the first time that a small molecule has been discovered that orally can correct premature stop codon mutations. And we're in the middle of partnering discussions on that. So you can see the story with Tay. It's actually 4 years, 3 candidates, about 3 million of diluted capital. We kept recycling the money to create new projects. We've had some great supportive investors, including O2H, Meltwin, I don't think Mike's here, Bren Capital, Scottish Enterprise, fantastically supportive, and the University of Dundee actually invested in us when they didn't have money. They didn't have money now. There was nothing to do with that. So that's the Tay story. And then Hawkhill is a spin-out from Tay. And the reason we did that was that we'd finished the third project, and we could have kept ideating, often starting with intellectual property from the university, and then, as we all often do, find a home from a therapeutic area perspective and then find investors. Or, which is what we ended up doing, what's the hottest space right now for investment? Obesity. Let's start in that space and find an asset. Couldn't find one, so we self-ideated, and that's the basis for Hawkhill. So
That's me.
that was the old you. I never stopped running around doing triathlons and different things. So that was the old you. This is the new you. Yeah, that's more. I'm breathing out. Copyright. So Hawkhill's premise is that we are going after anti-obesity treatments in a muscle-sparing way with an oral drug. That's fundamentally different to current approaches. So we actually incorporated the company back in June, July last year. We spun it out, and the entire team has moved over. We still spend time in Tay, making sure we monetize those assets and continue that work. But essentially, Hawkhill was a clean asset for investment. The project is super early. What I will tell you is that I'm going to tell you very little about it because we're in the thick of investment discussions, and I can't give too much away because of the nature of the target we're actually going after. That's the downside. But I've told you the corporate story, and that's the setting up and background behind Hawkhill. There's Sunil again. We all know what's gone on in the last 4 or 5 years. Who'd have thought, let's be honest, that this would be where we are with GLP-1 agonists and the increasing complexity with different incretin compounds and products coming through. Huge market, no pun. However, and interestingly, the GLP-1s as a class clearly have other benefits. And I think the actual utility in obesity is probably not the best thing about these drugs. It's all the other benefits, either directly through weight loss or other modes of action in different indications that we're now seeing from type 2 diabetes and heart disease and even Alzheimer's and so on, with some of the drugs being put into clinical trials in those areas. So fascinating space, but it's taken a long time. I remember Steve Bloom's group at Imperial back in 2006 working in this space. And that was people before that. So it's taken a long time to get to this point. So just the 2 or 3 slides in on how we thought about this challenge. We're not interested in developing second or what I would say third generation peptide analogues. We're interested in small molecules. That's what we're good at doing. We don't know how to do anything else, so we'll stick to what we do well. So a couple of observations that we made. Those of you in the room that are over, I'm sure there's no one that's over 50 or heaven forbid 60, you might notice that you start to lose a little bit of muscle mass. This doesn't, obviously, you're not there yet. So you start to lose a little bit of muscle mass. Sadly, there is a correlation between all-cause mortality, that's in over 60s, this is on the left-hand side, and muscle strength and mortality risk. That's a clinical fact. Second observation, and this is the current set of GLP-1 or GLP-1 plus analogues. And what we did here was to plot loss of lean body mass with total weight loss. So yes, you can lose weight on these drugs, but sadly, typically around a third of that weight loss is muscle mass. Does anyone want to admit to being on GLP-1 agonist for personal experiences, or know anyone that's gone on the drugs and what they're going through?
Someone's on the
Lots
drug.
of friends.
Lots of friends, right? What do those friends say about the experiences? Unpleasant.
Losing muscle mass.
So that is
Someone's very wife coming on it. I think the wife is basically getting quite sick and nauseating, and the other, I think, less so. But the intake of protein and weight training has gone through the roof to try to alleviate that. Yeah.
So those are some observations that we, and of course many others, have made. Yes, these are fantastic drugs, but it's the muscle mass loss and other factors that I think we're starting to see all the complications and downsides. So our other observation, and the most important one really, was that an antibody called bimagrumab, which is originally developed by a biotech called Versanis, and acquired by or licensed to Novartis in the muscle wasting space, was then picked up by Lilly and has recently been through a phase 2B in obesity and also in diabetes. And this is just a real snapshot of the data. So here, so bimagrumab, that's the data. Fat mass loss, lean mass loss. You can see you lose the fat, you actually increase the amount of muscle very slightly. Is that a genuine effect? Well, it's measurable. What does it mean from actual useful muscle? That's a separate question that I won't go into today. So great weight loss, no muscle loss. And this is targeting the activin pathway. I won't go into the details of that today for other reasons, but it's a fundamentally different mechanism to the GLP-1 agonists and generally the incretin space. When you look at semaglutide, the sort of one of the standout early GLP-1 agonists, that's a typical profile. great weight loss, a lot of muscle mass loss, as we just heard. In the combination study, interestingly, between bimagrumab and semaglutide, even better fat mass loss and perhaps a marginal lean mass loss, but it certainly mitigated the muscle mass loss in that combination. That's a really interesting clinical observation. And this drug's been in over 1,000 patients now. It's pretty safe profile, although it is a clunky IV administration and quite a high dose. That's some of the downsides of that drug. However, for us, what it means is that this particular pathway, the activin pathway, is a very interesting space to be in. We've thought about target product profiles that speak to current clinical utility and where I think the field is going to absolutely be adjunct to a GLP-1 from our drug's perspective. A lot of people are on these drugs, and this is going to double and triple in the next 2, 3, 4 years. So a lot of people will be on these drugs. So we'll need to be adjunct, certainly perhaps for market entry, but then longer term as a maintenance agent, maintenance therapy, without all those downsides. That's probably the longer term, more lucrative space to be in. And those are the two target product profiles that we're thinking of. So just to give you a little bit of flavour for again what we're thinking about here. So this is a profile of body weight loss over time on one of the GLP-1s. And this is highlighting again the challenge that we're really focused on is muscle mass preservation, is that when people come off, sadly, they don't adapt their diet and nor do exercise like he does. So people put weight back on, but of course you only put fat back on. You rarely put muscle on, especially if you're over 50 or heaven forbid over 60. So this is the problem. And of course, you're not on one cycle, you're on several cycles. So you're always losing muscle. So that's the absolute focus for us. So all I will say about our project is that it's small molecule. You've seen the pathway we're working in. It's clinically and genetically validated. And on this right-hand side here at the bottom, we're really focused on that muscle preservation, and the pharmacology involves a number of different aspects of modulating that pathway. We don't expect to have any GI side effects, partly because we've a different route of administration to bimagrumab, and we don't have the same complexities as the antibody has. And indeed, your appetite will be maintained. On all these GLP-1s, your appetite's affected, obviously. But we don't expect, based on the bimagrumab data, the appetite to be affected. And of course, number one for us is an oral drug, small molecule with a different price point to the current GLP-1s. Sadly, that's all I can tell you about the project today. Otherwise, I'll just go to the last slide as this clicks forward, and I can tell you a bit about the fundraise. That's the summary. We supported the business with a loan from Tay across into Hawkhill, of which O2H is an investor in Tay. So O2H is also a shareholder in Hawkhill, amongst one or two others. So very supportive, thank you. And we're in the middle of a fundraise. The amount of money we need is around 20 million to get from where we are to a very advanced candidate. We have actually 3 projects within this pathway. We may well be collaborating with a pharma as well as part of this year. Whether we try and raise all of that in one go as a seed round, which is one option, or do it in bite-sized chunks, we'll see. But as Sunil said, watch this space. So obesity, I've not worked in this space before. I find it fascinating. New area, my background is neuroscience way back, and then different disease areas since. So new space, fascinating. We could just walk and eat less, but we don't. So this market's not going away. Thank you.
I got a question. So the current drugs will become generic at some point very soon, 2 years, 5 years, and then they'll be very cheap. So by the time your drug gets to market, you have to charge that price premium. Do you think you're going to get enough differentiation to existing drugs to be able to charge the premium?
Yeah, great question. So I think the FDA currently is very focused on weight loss as a measure of efficacy and therefore your primary endpoint. However, the muscle mass loss, they're getting very interested in that. And although it's not an approved endpoint yet, we think it will be. And they'll raise the bar again for new stuff coming through. So of course, at the minute, pharma's doing the obvious stuff, combinations of GLP-1, GIP, amylin, etc., etc. And there are some small molecule projects targeting those areas. But I think it's that muscle mass preservation or even slight increase, not too much, I think, because that's a dangerous area to be in. That will be what becomes the key area to focus on from a regulatory viewpoint, not just overall weight loss.
Yeah.
That will change the game.
Anyone else?
Yeah. Go first. So your goal is to go standalone, not in combination.
Both. Yeah. I think market entry, maybe both. You have to think about both. But
And because bimagrumab, for example, in clinical trials and in preclinical models, does not overcome the appetite suppression of the GLP-1. And also, when you cease GLP-1, which is happening in a lot of patients, then bimagrumab ceases to work. In combination, it works well, at least with semaglutide. Lilly has halted some of their trial with tirzepatide. But do you think with your approach, you will be able to overcome those issues of combining together, especially after cessation of GLP-1?
so the reason Lilly suspended the phase 2b with tirzepatide was in diabetes, where the change in HbA1c wasn't meaningfully different. So it's that setting that they've stopped. But in obesity, they're still going, and whether the product is commercially viable is a different question. That's more to do with the bimagrumab itself, as opposed to the clear efficacy and the benefit of being in combination. I think with us, we will not affect mechanistically, we will not affect appetite. So will our opportunity be bigger in combination or as a maintenance therapy? And where will the market be by the time we get there? It's hard to predict, but it's a great question.
And then do you believe that you have an impact on muscle strength? Because that's one of the weaknesses of bimagrumab. It increases muscle mass, but in a clinic, it does not improve the strength at all, right?
Yeah. That's also a reflection of the patient populations it's been in. One of the studies was sarcopenia, the elderly. With these small increases in muscle mass, are you actually able to measure improvements in strength? They were not really powered to do that, those studies. So that needs to be done properly if you're going to look at that as an endpoint. So that's a good
Clinically, it doesn't really work either
So,
on
yeah.
strength, right?
Yeah, and that's why I'm downplaying and trying to increase muscle mass to what end. If you can maintain, I think that's good enough. But yeah, it's a good question. And
Metabolically, yes, but maybe not functionally.
no, and then other indications, muscle wasting diseases, where that's more relevant. That's of course where this pathway originally started.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we want to go down the road, but others might.
We'll just call it one more go.
Yeah, great talk. I was just curious to know what stage your preclinical data is at, and I was wondering if you could say a little bit about your IP strategy.
It's an early stage project. Great question, but I can't say too much. It's you can see the timelines. We sat down with the company in June, and
Yeah,
we have started, and we have wet data.
Yeah, it's similar to when Capgene started there. So,
what do you think in terms of IP?
Yeah, that we will obviously be filing IP at some point, but as late as just one can, not there yet.
oh yeah, we will have it on the 5th of Feb. There will be an obesity panel at 3 p.m, which Tim will be chairing. And we've got the Chevy on the panel, and we've got SV Health as well. Have Novo here, but they're not allowed on the panel. As Lillian will be there as well, but they're not allowed on the panel. However, look, what I've seen with this space of business plan, there was huge interest, quite large sums of money for this particular company. So I can say that. So the interest has been amazing. And my Christmas holiday is reading some of the research papers about obesity and what's going on in the world, because obviously this is what's driving a lot of our industry right now, probably keeping us afloat. So anyway, thank you very much, Tim.
Great.